Srimad Bhavagatam Canto 11, Chapter 21, Text 12. Dhanya darva asti tantunam rasatai jasa charmanam kalavayu agnimrtoyaihi parthivanam yutayutaihi. Translation. Various objects such as grains, wooden utensils, things made of bone, thread, liquids, objects derived from fire, skins, and earthly objects are all purified by time, by the wind, by fire, by earth, and by water, either separately or in combination. Purport. The word kala or time is mentioned here since all purificatory processes take place within time. Text 13. Amityaliptam yatyena ganthalepam yapohati bhajate prakritim tasya tajaucham tava ishyate. Translation. A particular purifying agent is considered appropriate when its application removes the bad odor or dirty coverings of something contaminated object and makes it resume its original nature. Purport. Furniture, kitchen utensils, clothing, and other objects are purified by application of abrasion, alkali, acid, water, and so on. One thereby removes the bad fragrance or impure coating of such objects, restoring them to their original clean appearance. Text 14. Snana dana tapo vasta vidya samskara karmabhihi matsmritya chatmanaha saucham shuddhaha karma charitvijaha. Translation. The self can be cleansed by bathing, charity, austerity, age, personal strength, purificatory rituals, prescribed duties, and above all, by remembrance of me. The Brahmana and other twice-born men should be duly purified before performing their specific activities. Purport. The word avasta indicates that when boys and girls are young, they are kept pure by youthful innocence, and that as they grow up, they are kept pure through proper education and engagement. By one's individual potency, one should avoid sinful activities and the association of those inclined toward sense gratification. The word karma here refers to prescribed duties such as worshipping the spiritual master and the deity, chanting the Gayatri mantra 3 times daily, and accepting spiritual initiation. The prescribed duties of the varnashram system automatically purify one from the covering of false ego by dovetailing one's bodily designations in appropriate religious activities. There are specific duties for Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, Brahmacharis, Grihasthas, Vanaprasthas, and Sannyasis, as described previously in this canto by the Lord himself. The most significant word here is mat smritya, by remembrance of me. Ultimately, one cannot avoid the infection of illusion through any process except Krishna consciousness. The 3 modes of nature perpetually interact, and one must sometimes fall into the mode of ignorance and sometimes rise to the mode of goodness, uselessly rotating within the kingdom of illusion. But by Krishna consciousness, remembrance of the personality of Godhead, one can actually uproot one's tendency to act against the will of the Absolute Truth. Then one becomes freed from the clutches of Maya and goes back home, back to Godhead, as stated in the Garuda Purana. Apavitra pavitro va sarvavastam gatopi va yasmaret pundarikaksham sabhahyabhyantare suchihi. Whether one is pure or contaminated, and regardless of one's external situation, simply by remembering the lotus-eyed personality of Godhead, one can internally and externally cleanse one's existence. Lord Chaitanya recommended that we constantly remember the Supreme Lord by chanting his holy names, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This sublime process is essential for every human actually desirous of purifying his existence. Text 15. Mantrasya cha parigyanam karma suchirmadarpanam Dharmaha sampadyate satvir adharmastu viparyayaha. Translation: a mantra is purified when chanted with proper knowledge, and one's work is purified when offered to me. Thus by purification of the place, time, substance, doer, mantras and work, one becomes religious, and by negligence of those 6 items one is considered irreligious. Purport: one receives a mantra from the mouth of a bona fide spiritual master who instructs the disciple in the method, meaning, and ultimately purpose of the mantra. The bona fide spiritual master in this age gives his disciple the Mahamantra or holy names of God: Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. One who chants this mantra, considering himself to be the eternal servant of the Lord, gradually learns to chant offenselessly, and by such purified chanting quickly achieves the highest perfection of life. The Lord here summarizes his discussion of purity and impurity, which manifests ultimately in religious and irreligious life. Text 16. Kvachit gunopi doshaha syat doshopi vidhina gunaha gunadosharta niyamas tadpidamiva pathate. Translation: sometimes piety becomes sin, and sometimes what is ordinarily sin becomes piety on the strength of Vedic injunctions. Such special rules in effect eradicate the clear distinction between piety and sin. Purport: the Lord clearly explains here that material piety and sin are always relative considerations. For example, if a neighbor house is on fire and one chops a hole in the roof so that the trapped family may escape, one is considered to be a pious hero because of the dangerous condition. In normal conditions, however, if one chops a hole in his neighbor's roof or breaks the neighbor's windows, he is considered a criminal. Similarly, one who abandons one's wife and children is certainly irresponsible and thoughtless. If one takes sannyasa, however, and remains fixed on a higher spiritual platform, he is considered to be a most saintly person. Piety and sin therefore depend upon particular circumstance and are at times difficult to distinguish. According to Srila Madhvacharya, persons above the age of 14 are considered capable of distinguishing between good and bad, and are thus responsible for their pious and sinful activities. Animals, on the other hand, being merged in ignorance, cannot be blamed for their offenses or praised for their so-called good qualities, which all arise ultimately from ignorance. Human beings who act like animals, with the idea that one should not feel any guilt but should do whatever one likes, will certainly take birth as animals absorbed in ignorance. And there are other foolish people who, observing the relativity of material piety and sin, conclude that there is no absolute good. It should be understood, however, that Krishna consciousness is absolutely good because it involves complete obedience to the Absolute Truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose goodness is eternal and absolute. Those who are inclined to study material piety and sin ultimately experience frustration due to the relativity and variability of the subject matter. One should therefore come to the transcendental platform of Krishna consciousness, which is valid and perfect in all circumstances. Text 17. Samana karma charanam patitanam napatakam autpattiko gunaha sango nasayanaha patatyadaha. Translation: the same activities that would degrade an elevated person do not cause fall down for those who are already fallen. Indeed, one who is lying on the ground cannot possibly fall further. The material association that is dictated by one's own nature is considered a good quality. Purport: the Lord here further describes the ambiguity in ascertaining material piety and sin. Although intimate association with women is most abominable for a renounced sannyasi, the same association is pious for a householder who is ordered by Vedic injunction to approach his wife at the suitable time for procreation. Similarly, a Brahmana who drinks liquor is considered to be committing a most abominable act, whereas a Shudra, a low-class man, who can moderate his drinking is considered to be self-controlled. Piety and sin on the material level are thus relative considerations. Any member of society, however, who receives Diksha initiation into the chanting of the Lord's holy names must strictly obey the four regulative principles: no eating of meat, fish or eggs, no illicit sex, no intoxication, and no gambling. A spiritually initiated person neglecting these principles will certainly fall from his elevated position of liberation. Text 18. Yato yato nivarteta vimuchyeta tatastataha esha dharmo nirnam kshemaha shokam moha bhayapaha. Translation. By refraining from a particular sinful or materialistic activity, one becomes freed from its bondage. Such renunciation is the basis of religious and auspicious life for human beings and drives away all suffering, illusion, and fear. By refraining from a particular sinful or materialistic activity, one becomes freed from its bondage. Such renunciation is the basis of religious and auspicious life for human beings and drives away all suffering, illusion, and fear. Purport. In Chaitanya Charitamrita Adilila it is stated, Mahaprabhura Bhaktaga Niravairagya Pradhana Yahadeki Pritaghana Gaura Bhagavan. Renunciation is the basic principle sustaining the lives of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's devotees. Seeing this renunciation, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is extremely satisfied. Because of false ego, one considers oneself to be the proprietor and enjoyer of one's activities. Actually, Lord Kṛṣṇa, the Personality of Godhead, is the proprietor and enjoyer of our activities. Recognition of this fact in Krishna consciousness leads one to real renunciation. Every human being should perform his prescribed duty as an offering to the Supreme Lord. Then there will be no possibility of material entanglement. Lord Kṛṣṇa clearly explains in Bhagavad Gita that prescribed duties performed as an offering to the Lord. Then there will be no possibility of material entanglement. Lord Kṛṣṇa clearly explains in Bhagavad Gita that prescribed duties performed as an offering to the Lord award liberation from material bondage. Sinful activities cannot be offered to the Lord, but must be given up altogether. In effect, the distinction between piety and sin is made so that the living entities will become pious and eligible to surrender to the Supreme Lord. As explained in Bhagavad Gita, Yesham tvanan antagatam papam jnānam punyakarmanam te dvanda mohan nirmukta bhajante mam drithavrataha. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, and who are freed from the duality of delusion, engage themselves in my service with determination. By thorough piety, one's life becomes auspicious and freed from lamentation, illusion, and fear, and one can then take to the path of Krishna consciousness. Text 19. Vishayashu gunatyasat pumsaha sangastato bhavet sangat tatra bhavet kamaha kamadeva kalirnirnam. Translation. One who accepts material sense objects as desirable certainly becomes attached to them. From such attachment, lust arises, and this lust creates quarrel among men. Purport. The actual goal of human life should not be material sense gratification, for it is the basis of conflict in human society. Although the Vedic literature sometimes sanctions sense gratification, the ultimate purpose of the Vedas is renunciation, since Vedic culture cannot possibly recommend anything that disturbs human life. A lusty person is easily angered and becomes inimical to anyone frustrating his lusty desires. Since his sex desire can never be satisfied, a lusty person ultimately becomes frustrated with his own sex partner, and thus a love-hate relationship develops. A lusty person considers himself to be the enjoyer of God's creation and is therefore full of pride and false prestige. The lessly proud person will not be attracted to the process of humble submission at the lotus feet of the bona fide spiritual master. Attraction to illicit sex is thus the direct enemy of Krishna consciousness, which depends upon humble submission to the representative of the Supreme Lord. Lord Kṛṣṇa also states in Bhagavad Gita that desire for illicit sex is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. Because modern society sanctions unrestricted mixing of men and women, its citizens cannot possibly achieve peace. Rather, the regulation of conflict becomes the basis of social survival. This is the symptom of an ignorant society falsely accepting the material body as the highest good, as described here by the words Vishayeshu gunatyasat. One who is too affectionate to his own body will inevitably be seized by sex desire. Text 20. Kalir durvishaha krodaha krodas tamastam anuvartate tamasa grasyate pumsas chetana vyapinidrutam. Translation. From quarrel arises intolerable anger, followed by the darkness of ignorance. This ignorance quickly overtakes a man's broad intelligence. From quarrel arises intolerable anger, followed by the darkness of ignorance. This ignorance quickly overtakes a man's broad intelligence. Purport. The desire for material association arises from one's propensity to deny that everything is God's energy. Falsely imagining material sense objects to be separate from the Supreme Lord, one desires to enjoy them. Such desire gives rise to conflict and quarrel in human society. This conflict inevitably gives rise to great anger, which makes human beings become foolish and destructive. Thus the actual goal of human life is quickly forgotten. Text 21. Taya virahitaha sado jantuhu sunyaya kalpate tatosya swarta vipramsho murchitasya mritasya cha. Translation. O saintly Uddhava, a person bereft of real intelligence is considered to have lost everything. Deviated from the actual purpose of his life, he becomes dull, just like a dead person. Purport. Krishna consciousness is so vital and essential that one who has deviated from this progressive path of self-realization is considered to be virtually unconscious or like a dead person. Since every living entity is part and parcel of Krishna, anyone who falsely identifies with the external body is actually unconscious of his real position. Thus it is stated, Sunyaya kalpate, pursuing that which has no factual existence. He is devoid of any tangible progress or benefit in life. One whose consciousness is absorbed in the non-existent becomes himself practically non-existent. In this way, the eternal living entity becomes fallen, lost in the ocean of material existence, and it is only by the special mercy of the pure devotees of the Lord that they can be rescued. The Lord's devotees therefore instruct the fallen people to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. By this process, our real consciousness and life can be quickly revived. Text 22. Vishayabhiniveshena natmanam vedana param vrikshajivikaya jivan vyartham bastreva yahasvasan. Translation. Because of absorption in sense gratification, one cannot recognize himself or others. Living uselessly in ignorance like a tree, one is merely breathing just like a bellows. Purport. Just as trees having no means of defending themselves are always being cut down, similarly the conditioned soul are constantly being cut down by the cruel laws of nature, which impose innumerable miseries, culminating in sudden death. Although foolish people think they are helping themselves and others, they actually do not know their own identity nor the identities of their so-called friends and relatives. Absorbed in gratifying the senses of the external body, they spend their lives uselessly without spiritual profit. This useless lifestyle can be transformed into a perfect life simply by chanting the holy names of God in Krishna consciousness, as recommended by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Text 23. Palashrutir iyam nirnam na shreyo rochanam param shreyo vivakshaya proktam yatha vaishajya rochanam. Translation: those statements of scripture promising fruitive rewards do not prescribe the ultimate good for men, but are merely enticements for executing beneficial religious duties, like promises of candy spoken to induce a child to take beneficial medicine. Those statements of scriptures promising fruitive rewards do not prescribe the ultimate good for men, but are merely enticement for executing beneficial religious duties, like promises of candy spoken to induce a child to take beneficial medicine. Purport: in the previous verse, Lord Kṛṣṇa stated that persons absorbed in sense gratification certainly deviate from the real purpose of human life. But since the Vedas themselves promise heavenly sense gratification as the result of sacrifice and austerity, how can such promotion to heaven be considered a deviation from the goal of life? The Lord here explains that the fruitive rewards offered in religious scriptures are merely inducements, like candy that is used to induce a child to take medicine. It is actually the medicine that is beneficial, and not the candy. Similarly, in fruitive sacrifices, it is the worship of Lord Vishnu that is beneficial, not the fruitive reward itself. According to Bhagavad Gita, those professing fruitive rewards to be the ultimate goal of religious scripture are certainly less intelligent fools, inimical to the purpose of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord desires that all conditioned souls be purified and come back home, back to Godhead, for an eternal life of bliss and knowledge. One who opposes the Lord's purpose in the name of religiosity is certainly bewildered about the purpose of life. Text 24. Utpatyaiva hi kameshu praneshu svajaneshu cha ashakta manaso matya atmano narta hetushu. Translation: simply by material birth, human beings become attached within their minds to personal sense gratification. Long duration of life, sense activities, bodily strength, sexual potency, and friends and family. Their minds are thus absorbed in that which defeats their actual self-interest. Purport: our attachment to the material body and the bodies of family and friends inevitably leads to unbearable anxiety and suffering. The mind absorbed in the bodily concept of life cannot possibly advance in self-realization, and thus one's hope for an eternal life of bliss and knowledge is defeated by the objects of one's so-called affection. Activities performed in ignorance are beneficial neither for oneself nor others, just as the charitable activities one may perform in a dream bestow no tangible benefit on real people. The conditioned soul is dreaming of a world separate from God, but any advancement experienced in this dream world is merely hallucination. The Lord states in Bhagavad Gita, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, He is the supreme enjoyer and Lord of all planets and worlds. Only by Krishna consciousness, recognition of the supremacy of God, can one make actual progress in life. Text 25. Natana vidushaha swartham Brahmyato vrijinatvani katham yujjat punasteshu tam stamo vishato buddha. Translation: those ignorant of their real self-interest are wandering on the path of material existence, gradually heading toward darkness. Why would the Vedas further encourage them in sense gratification if they, although foolish, submissively pay heed to Vedic injunctions? Purport: Materialistic persons are not prepared to renounce society, friendship, and love, which are all based on sex indulgence, to instead take to a life of renunciation and self-realization. In order to bring such foolish persons under the canopy of Vedic injunctions, the Vedas promise innumerable material rewards, even promotion to heavenly planets, to those who faithfully execute the Vedic injunctions. As explained by the Lord, such rewards are like the candy offered to a child, who then faithfully takes his medicine. Material enjoyment is certainly the cause of suffering, since all enjoyable objects are subject to destruction along with the so-called enjoyer. Material life is simply painful and full of anxiety, frustration, and lamentation. We become agitated by seeing a so-called enjoyable object, such as the naked body of a woman, a beautiful residence, a sumptuous tray of food, or the expansion of our own prestige. But actually such imagined happiness is simply the intense expectation of a satisfaction that never comes. One remains perpetually frustrated in material existence, and the more one tries to enjoy, the more one's frustration increases. Therefore, the Vedic knowledge, which aims at ultimate peace and happiness on the spiritual platform, cannot possibly authorize the materialistic way of life. Material rewards are employed by the Vedas merely as inducements for the conditioned soul to take the medicine, submission to the Supreme Lord Vishnu, through various types of sacrifice. Those who are Veda Vada Vrata claim that religious scriptures are meant to facilitate sense gratification in the ignorance of conditioned life. The true goal of religion, however, is spiritual liberation, in which material sense gratification ceases to exist. The darkness of bodily attachment cannot exist in the effulgent light of spiritual knowledge. In the ocean of spiritual bliss, the anxiety-ridden apparent pleasure of this world vanishes completely. The true meaning of Veda or perfect knowledge is to surrender to the Supreme Lord in full Krishna consciousness for an eternal life of bliss and knowledge as the Lord's faithful servant. Text 26. Evam vyavasitam kechit avigyaya kubudhayah palashrutim kusumitam navedagya vadantihi. Translation. Persons with perverted intelligence do not understand this actual purpose of Vedic knowledge, and instead propagate as the highest Vedic truth the flowery statements of the Vedas that promise material rewards. Those in actual knowledge of the Vedas never speak in that way. Purport. The followers of the Karma Mimamsa philosophy declare that there is no eternal kingdom of God beyond this universe, and that one should therefore become a professional performer of Vedic rituals in order to keep oneself in a material heavenly planet. As explained by the Lord to Sri Uddhava in a previous chapter, there is no actual happiness in the material world, since one will inevitably rotate throughout the various planetary environments, stretching from heaven to hell, and thus always be disturbed within the material atmosphere. Although the doctor may give a child candy-covered medicine, one who urges the child to eat the candy and throw away the medicine is certainly a great fool. In the same way, the flowery statements of the Vedas describing heavenly enjoyment do not award the real fruit of Vedic knowledge, but merely supply decorative blossoms of sense gratification. As stated in the Vedas, Tat Vishno Paramam Padam Sada Pashyanti Surya. Even the demigods who are permanent residents of heaven are always looking to the eternal abode of the Supreme Lord. Foolish people who admire the standard of living in material heaven should therefore note that the demigods themselves are devotees of the Supreme Lord. One should not become a bogus propagator of so-called Vedic knowledge, but should take to Krishna consciousness and make a genuine solution to the problem of progressing in life. Text 27. Kaminaha krapana lubdhaha pushpeshu phala buddhayaha agni mukta dumatantaha svam lokam na vidantite. Translation. Those who are full of lust, avarice, and greed mistake mere flowers to be the actual fruit of life. Bewildered by the glare of fire and suffocated by its smoke, they cannot recognize their own true identity. Purport. Those attached to female association become proud separatists, desiring everything for their personal gratification and that of their lady friends. They become greedy misers, full of anxiety and envy. Such unfortunate persons mistake the flowery statements of the Vedas to be the highest perfection of life. The word Agni Muktaha, bewildered by fire, indicates that such persons consider Vedic fire sacrifices awarding material benefit to be the highest religious truth, and thus they merge into ignorance. Fire produces smoke, which obscures one's vision. Similarly, the path of fruitive fire sacrifice is cloudy and obscure, without clear understanding of the spirit soul. The Lord here clearly states that fruitive religionists cannot understand their actual spiritual identity, nor do they realize the genuine shelter of the spirit soul in the kingdom of God. Lord Kṛṣṇa states in Bhagavad Gita, Vedaischa sarvairaham vedyaha, all Vedic knowledge is actually meant to lead one to pure love of Godhead. Lord Kṛṣṇa is certainly the absolute truth, and to love him is the ultimate purpose of our existence. The Vedic knowledge patiently tries to bring the conditioned soul to his perfection of pure Krishna consciousness. Text 28. Nate mam anga jananti hridistam yaidam yataha uktha shastra hyasutrapo yatha nihara chakshushaha. Translation. My dear Uddhava, persons dedicated to sense gratification obtained through honoring the Vedic rituals cannot understand that I am situated in everyone's heart and that the entire universe is not different from me and emanates from me. Indeed, they are just like persons whose eyes are covered by fog. Purport. The word Uktha Shastraha refers to the chanting of the certain Vedic hymns by which one obtains fruitive results in this world and the next. The word Shastra also indicates a weapon, and thus Uktha Shastra also means the weapon used in Vedic sacrifice to kill the sacrificial animal. Persons exploiting Vedic knowledge for bodily gratification are slaughtering themselves with the weapon of materialistic religious principles. They are also compared to those trying to see within a dense fog the false bodily concept of life, in which one ignores the eternal soul within the body, is a dense fog of ignorance that blocks our vision of God. Lord Kṛṣṇa therefore begins his instruction in Bhagavad Gita by clearing away the dense ignorance of the bodily concept of life. Religion means the law of God. The Lord's final order or law is that every conditioned soul surrender unto Him, learn to serve and love Him, and thus go back home, back to Godhead. This is the process of Krishna consciousness. Text 29:30. Te me matam avigyaya paroksham vishayatmakaha himsayam yadiragaha syat yagyaiva nachodana himsa vihara hyalap Sinthaihi pashupihi sukhe chaya yajante devata yagyaihi pitrabhuta patin khalaha. Translation. Those who are sworn to sense gratification cannot understand the confidential conclusion of Vedic knowledge as explained by me. Taking pleasure in violence, they cruelly slaughter innocent animals in sacrifice for their own sense gratification, and thus worship demigods, forefathers, and leaders among ghostly creatures. Such passion for violence, however, is never encouraged within the process of Vedic sacrifice. Purport. The Vedic scriptures sanction occasional animal sacrifice to satisfy cruel low-class men who cannot live without the taste of flesh and blood. Such concessions, however, are restricted by rigorous obligatory rituals and are meant to gradually discourage animal killing, just as the exorbitant cost of a liquor license restricts the number of retail outlets selling alcoholic beverages. But unscrupulous persons misconstrue such restrictive sanctions and declared that Vedic sacrifice is meant for killing animals in order to enjoy sense gratification. Being materialistic, they desire to attain the planets of the forefathers or demigods and thus worship such beings. Sometimes materialistic persons are attracted to the subtle lifestyle of ghosts and worship ghostly creatures. These methods constitute gross ignorance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the actual enjoyer of all sacrifice and austerity. The demons perform Vedic sacrifice but are inimical to Lord Narayana, for they consider the demigods, the forefathers, or Lord Shiva to be equal to God. Although understanding the authority of Vedic rituals, they do not accept the ultimate Vedic conclusion and therefore never surrender to God. Thus, false religious principles flourish in the demoniac societies of the animal killers. Although in countries like America people outwardly profess to be followers of God alone, actual worship and glorification is offered to innumerable popular heroes, such as entertainers, politicians, athletes, and other equally insignificant persons. Animal killers, being grossly materialistic, are inevitably attracted to the extraordinary features of material illusion. They cannot understand the real platform of Krishna consciousness or spiritual life. Text 31. Svapnopamam amum lokam asantam shravana priyam Ashisho hridi sankalpya tyajante arthan yathavanik. Translation. Just as a foolish businessman gives up his real wealth in useless business speculation, foolish persons give up all that is actually valuable in life and instead pursue promotion to material heaven, which although pleasing to hear about is actually unreal like a dream. Such bewildered persons imagine within their hearts that they will achieve all material blessings. Purport. All over the world, people are working hard to achieve perfect sense gratification in this life or the next. As eternal living beings, part and parcel of Lord Kṛṣṇa, we are naturally endowed with all bliss and knowledge in the association of the Lord. But giving up this exalted position of spiritual bliss and knowledge, we foolishly waste our time pursuing the phantasmagoria of bodily happiness, just like a foolish businessman who squanders his real assets in imaginary business ventures that deliver no real profit. Text 32. Rajaha sattva tamo nishta, Rajaha sattva tamo jushaha, Upasata indra mukhyan, Devadina yathaiva mam. Translation. Those established in material passion, goodness, and ignorance worship the particular demigods and other deities headed by Indra, who manifest the same modes of passion, goodness, and or ignorance. They fail, however, to properly worship me. Purport. Although the demigods are part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, demigod worship fosters the false idea that the demigods exist apart from the Supreme Lord. Such worship is avidya purvakam, or an improper approach to this absolute truth. Srila Madhvacharya quotes from the Harivamsa that among those primarily in the mode of ignorance, there are sometimes manifestations of passion and goodness. Ignorant persons possessing a tendency toward goodness may go to hell, but are also allowed a little heavenly pleasure. Thus it can be seen that a man suffering in miserable financial or political conditions sometimes enjoys the company of a beautiful wife, though his general condition is hellish. Those in ignorance mixed slightly with passion simply go to hell, and those purely in the mode of ignorance glide down to the darkest region of hell. Those devoid of devotion to the Supreme Lord are in ignorance in these three categories. Sometimes persons situated in the mode of goodness accept the supremacy of the Lord, but are more attracted to the demigods, believing that through Vedic rituals they can achieve the same standard of living as the demigods. This proud tendency is certainly an obstacle in the loving service of the Supreme Lord and ultimately causes fall down. Texts 33-34. Ishtveha devata yagyair gatvaram syamahe divi tasyantaiha bhuyasma mahashala mahakulaha Evam pushpitaya vacha vyakshipta manasam nirnam maninam chatiluphanam madvartapi narochate. Translation. The worshippers of demigods think, we shall worship the demigods in this life, and by our sacrifices we shall go to heaven and enjoy there. When that enjoyment is finished, we shall return to this world and take birth as great householders in aristocratic families. Being excessively proud and greedy, such persons are bewildered by the flowery words of the Vedas. They are not attracted to topics about me, the Supreme Lord. Purport. Real pleasure is found in the transcendental form of the Lord, who is the supreme Cupid engaging in pastimes of love in the spiritual world. Neglecting the eternal bliss of the Lord's pastimes, the foolish worshippers of the demigods dream of becoming like the Lord, but they achieve exactly the opposite result. In other words, they continue perpetually in the cycle of birth and death. Text 35. Veda Brahmatma Vishayas Trikanda Vishaya ime Paroksha Vadarshayah Paroksham Mama Cha Priyam. Translation. The Veda is divided into three divisions, ultimately reveal the living entity as pure spirit soul. The Vedic seers and mantras, however, deal in esoteric terms, and I also am pleased by such confidential descriptions. Purport. In the previous verses, Lord Kṛṣṇa clearly refuted the concept that Vedic knowledge is meant for material enjoyment, and here the Lord summarized the actual purpose of Vedic literature, self-realization. Although the conditioned souls are struggling in the network of material energy, their actual existence is transcendental freedom in the kingdom of God. The Vedas gradually lift the conditioned soul out of the darkness of illusion and establish him in the eternal loving service of the Lord. As stated in the Vedanta Sutra, Anavritihi Sabdat, one who properly hears Vedic knowledge does not have to return to the cycle of birth and death. One may ask why the Lord himself, as well as the Lord's representatives, the Vedic seers and mantras, speak in esoteric or indirect terms. As the Lord states in Bhagavad Gita, Naham prakashaha sarvasya, the Supreme Lord does not allow himself to be taken cheaply, and thus he is not manifest to superficial or inimical people. Those who are polluted by the material atmosphere are induced to purify themselves through Vedic rituals that offer fruitive results, just as a child to induce to take medicine by the offer of a candy reward. Because of the confidential nature of Vedic exposition, less intelligent persons cannot appreciate the ultimate transcendental purpose of the Vedas, and consequently they fall down to the platform of sense gratification. The term Brahmatma, spirit soul, ultimately indicates the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who states in Bhagavad Gita that knowledge of him is Raja Guhyam, the most confidential of all secrets. One who depends upon material sense gratification remains in gross ignorance of the absolute truth. One who depends upon mental and intellectual speculation may get a clue that the eternal soul and supreme super soul are both within the material body, but one who depends upon the Lord himself, faithfully hearing the Lord's own message in Bhagavad Gita, perfectly understands the entire situation and goes back home, back to Godhead, having fulfilled the true purpose of Vedic knowledge. Text 36. Sabda Brahma Sudurbodham Pranindriya Manomayam Anantaparam Gampiram Durvigahyam Samudravat. Translation. The transcendental sound of the Vedas is very difficult to comprehend and manifests on different levels within the prana, senses and mind. This Vedic sound is unlimited, very deep, and unfathomable, just like the ocean. Purport. According to Vedic knowledge, the Vedic sound is divided into four phases, which can be understood only by the most intelligent Brahmins. This is because three of the divisions are internally situated within the living entity. Only the fourth division is externally manifested as speech. Even this fourth phase of Vedic sound, called the Vaikhari, is very difficult to understand for ordinary human beings. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains these divisions as follows. The prana phase of Vedic sound, known as para, is situated in the Adhara chakra. The mental phase, known as Pashyanti, is situated in the area of the navel. On the Manipuraka chakra, the intellectual phase, known as Madhyama, is situated in the heart area. In the Anahata chakra, finally, the manifest sensory phase of Vedic sound is called Vaikhari. Such Vedic sound is Anantapara because it comprehends all vital energies within the universe and beyond, and is thus undivided by the time or space. Actually, Vedic sound vibration is so subtle, unfathomable, and deep that only the Lord himself and his empowered followers such as Vyasa and Narada can understand its actual form and meaning. Ordinary human beings cannot comprehend all of the intricacies and subtleties of Vedic sound, but if one takes to Krishna consciousness, one can immediately understand the conclusion of all Vedic knowledge, namely Lord Kṛṣṇa himself, the original source of Vedic knowledge. Foolish persons devote their vital air, senses and mind to sense gratification and thus do not understand the transcendental value of the holy name of God. Ultimately, the essence of all Vedic sound is the holy name of the Supreme Lord, which is not different from the Lord himself. Since the Lord is unlimited, his holy name is equally unlimited. No one can understand the transcendental glories of the Lord without the Lord's direct mercy. By offenselessly chanting the holy names Hare Kṛṣṇa, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, one can enter into the transcendental mysteries of Vedic sound. Otherwise, the knowledge of the Vedas will remain durvigahyam, or impossible to penetrate. Text 37. Mayopabhitam bhumna brahmananta saktina bhuteshu gosharupena visheshurneva lakshate. Translation. As the unlimited, unchanging, and omnipotent personality of Godhead dwelling within all living beings, I personally establish the Vedic sound vibration in the form of Omkara within all living entities. It is thus perceived subtly, just like a single strand of fiber on a lotus stalk. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead personally resides within the heart of every living entity. And from this verse we can understand that the seed of all Vedic knowledge is also situated within all living beings. In this way, the process of awakening Vedic knowledge and thereby awakening one's eternal relationship with God is naturally and necessary for everyone. All perfection is found within the heart of the living being. As soon as the heart is purified by chanting the holy names of God, that perfection, Krishna consciousness, immediately awakens. Text 38-40. Yathornanabhirhridayat urnam udvamate mukhat akashad koshavan prano manasas parsharupina chandomayo mrithamayah sahasra padavim prabhu omkaratvyajitas sparsha Svarosmantashtabhushitam Vichitra Vitatam Chandobhishchaturuttaraihi Anantaparam Bratim Srijati Akshipate Swayam. Translation. Just as a spider brings forth from its heart its web and emits it through its mouth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead manifests himself as the reverberating primal vital air comprising all sacred Vedic matters and full of transcendental pleasure. Thus the Lord, from the ethereal sky of his heart, creates the great and limitless Vedic sound by the agents of his mind, which conceives of variegated sounds such as the sparshas. The Vedic sound branches out in thousands of directions, adorned with the different letters expanded from the syllable Om, the consonant vowels, sibilants, and semivowels. The Veda is then elaborated by many verbal varieties expressed in different meters, each having 4 more syllables than the previous one. Ultimately, the Lord again withdraws his manifestation of Vedic sound within himself. Purport. Srila Sridhar Swami has given an elaborate technical explanation of these 3 verses, the understanding of which requires extensive linguistic knowledge of the Sanskrit language. The essential point is that transcendental knowledge is expressed through Vedic sound vibration, which is itself a manifestation of the Absolute Truth, the personality of Godhead. Vedic sound emanates from the Supreme Lord and is vibrated to glorify and understand Him. The conclusion of all Vedic sound vibration is found in Bhagavad Gita, wherein the Lord states, Vedaischa sarvair aham eva vedyaha. All Vedic knowledge is simply meant to teach us to know and love God. One who always thinks of Lord Kṛṣṇa, who becomes the Lord's devotee, and who bows down to and worships the Lord with faith and devotion, chanting His holy name, has certainly achieved a perfect understanding of all that is indicated by the word Veda knowledge. Text 41. Gayatri Yusink Anushtup cha Brihati Panktireva cha Trishtup Jagati Ati Chando Hiatyasti Ati Jagat Virat. Translation. The Vedic meters are Gayatri, Ushnik, Anushtup, Brihati, Pankti, Trishtup, Jagati, Ati Chanda, Atyashti, Ati Jagati, and Ati Virat. Purport. The Gayatri meter has 24 syllables, the Ushnik 28, and Anushtup 32, and so on, each meter having 4 more syllables than the previous one. Vedic sound is called Brihati, or most expansive, and thus it is not possible for ordinary living entities to understand all the technical details in this matter. Text 42. Kim vidhatte kimachaste kimanutya vikalpayet itiyasya hridayam loke nanyo matveda kaschana. Translation. In the entire world, no one but me actually understands the confidential purpose of Vedic knowledge. Thus, people do not know what the Vedas are actually prescribing in the ritualistic injunctions of Karma Kanda, or what object is actually being indicated in the formulas of worship found in the Upasana Kanda, or that which is elaborately discussed through various hypotheses in the Jnana Kanda section of the Vedas. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Absolute Truth, Lord Sri Krishna. Since the Lord is the source, maintainer, and ultimate goal of Vedic knowledge, He is Vedavid, or the only true knower of Vedic knowledge. So-called philosophers, either Vedic scholars or ordinary men, may give their sectarian opinion, but it is the Lord Himself who knows the confidential purpose of the Vedas. The Lord is the only actual shelter and lovable object for all living entities, as He states in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Yat yat vibhutimat sattvam shimad urjitam evava tattadeva vagachatvam mama tejom sambhavam. Know that all beautiful, glorious, and mighty creations spring from but a spark of my splendor. All beautiful, extraordinary, and powerful manifestations are insignificant displays of the Lord's own opulences. Although ordinary people may quarrel over the purpose of religion, the actual purpose is one, Krishna consciousness, a pure love of Godhead. All Vedic formulas are understood to be preliminary stages leading to the perfect stage of Krishna consciousness, in which one fully surrenders to the devotional service of the Lord. The pure devotees of the Lord represent Him within this world and never speak anything which is not authorized by the Lord. The pure devotees of the Lord represent Him within this world and never speak anything which is not authorized by the Lord. Because they are repeating the Lord's own words, they are also to be understood as true knowers of the Vedas. Text 43. Mam vidhatte bhidhatte mam vikalpya pohyate tvaham Etavan sarva vedarthaha sabda ashtayamambitam maya matram anutyante pratishitya prasidati. Translation: I am the ritualistic sacrifice enjoined by the Vedas, and I am the worshipable deity. It is I who am presented as various philosophical hypotheses, and it is I alone who am then refuted by philosophical analysis. The transcendental sound vibration thus establishes me as the essential meaning of all Vedic knowledge. The Vedas, elaborately analyzing all material duality as nothing but my illusory potency, ultimately completely negate this duality and achieve their own satisfaction. Purport: the Lord declares in the previous verse that He alone knows the ultimate purpose of the Vedas, and now the Lord reveals that He alone is the ultimate basis and purpose of all Vedic knowledge. The Karma Kanda section of the Vedas prescribes ritualistic sacrifices for promotion to heaven. Such sacrifices are the Lord Himself. Similarly, the Upasana Kanda section of the Vedas designates different demigods as objects of ritualistic worship, and these deities are not different from the Lord Himself, being expansions of the Lord's body. In the Jnana section of the Vedas, different philosophical methods of analysis are presented and refuted. Such knowledge which analyzes the potency of the Supreme Lord is not different from Him. Ultimately, Lord Kṛṣṇa is everything, because everything is part and parcel of the Lord's multipotencies. Although Vedic literature entices those absorbed in material duality to begin the Vedic way of life by offering them materially desirable rewards, the Vedas eventually refute all material duality by bringing one to the stage of God consciousness, wherein there is nothing different from the Supreme Lord. Within the Vedic literature, there are various injunctions stating that at a particular stage of life one should give up fruitive rituals and take to the path of knowledge. Similarly, other injunctions declare that a self-realized soul should give up the path of speculative knowledge and take directly to the shelter of the Absolute Truth, the personality of Godhead. But nowhere is there an injunction recommending that one give up the loving service of the Lord, because that is the eternal constitutional position of every living entity. Different philosophical theses are presented and rejected in the Vedas, since one who is progressing must give up each previous stage in the advancement of knowledge. For example, one who is addicted to sex enjoyment is taught to accept religious marriage and enjoy sex pleasure with his wife. Such ritualistic knowledge is to be given up when one attains the stage of detachment, whereupon one is recommended to take the renounced order of life. In that stage of life, one is forbidden to see or speak with women. When, however, one reaches the perfection of Krishna consciousness, wherein the Lord is manifest everywhere, one may engage all living entities, including women, in the loving service of the Lord without danger of spiritual fall down. Thus, different injunctions based on progressive stages of spiritual vision are presented and refuted in Vedic literature. Since all such injunctions and processes are ultimately meant for the achievement of Krishna consciousness, the loving service of the Lord, they are not different from Lord Kṛṣṇa Himself. The conditioned soul, therefore, should not prematurely stop his progressive march back to Godhead, by foolishly mistaking an intermediate or preliminary stage of advancement as the actual goal of life. One must understand that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the source, maintenance, and resting place of everything, and that every living entity is the Lord's eternal servant. In this way, one should continue on the Vedic path all the way back to Godhead, for eternal life of bliss and knowledge. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada to the 11th Canto, 21st chapter of the Srimad Bhavagatam entitled Lord Kṛṣṇa's Explanation of the Vedic Path.